Within the span of a year, Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth both launched. Two mainline entries launching that close together is something we haven't seen in a very long time. In the years prior, Square Enix also launched a large number of AA games. In fact, at one point, it felt like they were releasing so many of these smaller AA games that they weren't even giving enough time and attention to the marketing of these titles. But now we're looking forward to the coming year, and there is just one small problem. If you head over to Square Enix's website for their release schedule, you can see all of their upcoming games for 2025, which thus far is only consisting of exactly two games: the PC port of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D Remake. And that is literally it for the year, with every other title on the list currently filed under to be announced. The big two games on this list are Dragon Quest XII and Kingdom Hearts 4, and it is extremely unlikely that either of those games are going to be releasing this year. Straight up, I don't think KH4 is releasing in 2025. I totally think that game is going to be a 2026 title. But we do have Kingdom Hearts Missing Link coming. This mobile game is releasing at an opportune time to keep Kingdom Hearts fans engaged until KH4 comes out. But is it the big, proper Square Enix title that fans are looking for? Most likely not. However, for Dragon Quest XII, I think that game is quite far off. And while we may get some sort of teaser, some sort of new images or media from the game, in terms of an actual marketing lead up for the game to release this year or next year, probably unlikely, as I imagine that Dragon Quest XII is going to be a late generation game. After all, currently all we have on the game is literally just a logo. No images of the characters, no solid gameplay details, none of that. So it's hard to imagine it releasing next year. All of which is to say is that this heavily implies that 2025 is going to be a barren year for Square Enix. Without much new stuff coming, it's worth noting that you can get the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth Twin Pack for only $56 thanks to our sponsor Instant Gaming. Bear in mind, it is $70 on the official Steam store, so this is a huge discount, and you get a code that you can redeem on Steam. Not to mention that they're also letting us give away a free game at the end of every month. All you have to do is click the link in the description or pinned comment and then smack that participate button. It is literally that easy. So be sure to check them out and get a great deal on these PC ports. But this leaves a big question. Is 2025 really just going to be a remake, a PC port of a remake, and a mobile game? So of course, this all connects back to the sales expectations for Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where it's been previously stated that both of these games did not meet their sales expectations. As a result, Square Enix had a number of layoffs, but also, back in May, they confirmed that they canceled a number of games, these games being described as ones that didn't fit with their new development strategy. Square is calling this new development strategy Square Enix Reboots and Awakens, which the company is describing as a shift from quantity to quality, with an article on the report saying, quote, "Square Enix hopes to focus on developing games which deliver fun that only the group can create, while also making sure to regularly release AAA titles in its major franchises to maintain and build upon its fanbase. Combine this with the company's plans to focus over quality over quantity. It sounds certainly as though big AAA games such as the third part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy will be Square Enix's priority for the next few years." And indeed, this has been a sentiment that President Takashi Kiryu has iterated multiple times. He wants Square Enix to make less games overall, but more good, high-quality games. To me, I think this is one of the best things that Square Enix can do. After all, their quantity output this generation has actually been pretty insane. There really hasn't been a shortage of games. They put out a lot of them. However, if you go back and look at all the games they put out, how many of them are really and truly bangers? Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of hidden gems here, but it seems like for every Octopath, there is another Forspoken, Foam Stars, etc. And especially among their AA lineup, where they put out a lot of AA games, but the number of those AA games that had true staying power, it doesn't feel like there's been that many recently. And I couldn't help but think when they were putting out multiple AA games back to back, that wouldn't it just be better to put out one really high quality AA game, or even instead of doing all those AA games, make one really impressive AAA game for the budget of all of them. And to be clear, I do want Square Enix to continue to make AA games, but I think that they should put put higher effort into them when they do, and a much bigger marketing effort. After all, Atlas games cost a lot less to make than something like Final Fantasy games. However, they've managed to continue growing those franchises without breaking the bank. Indeed, Square Enix needs their own mix of AAA titles, something like the Final Fantasy VII Re-Trilogy, combined with more smaller titles the size of an Octopath or a Dragon Quest III HD 2D, and them also having the relative quality of those titles, rather than something like DioField Chronicle, with the game on Metacritic having a 71 for PS5, 63 for PC, and 67 for Nintendo Switch. This game was also not a huge seller at all, and so it seems to me that rather than developing something like the DioField Chronicle, it probably would have been a better idea to fold the budget and resources of that game into another game. Exact same thing with Valkyrie Elysium, a game that's Metascore sits currently at 65 with a user score of 6.4. Indeed, why release a game like that when you could have just folded those resources over into something that would have been more successful? And it's not even to say that these two games shouldn't have happened. In fact, I think that reviving an IP like Valkyrie is a great idea. However, this title could have got a lot more budget and attention if you would have not developed something like Foam Stars and allocated that budget into making something like the next Valkyrie game a huge success, or putting more money into Square Enix's successful AA games. Neo: The World Ends With You was a wonderfully received game, and yet unfortunately, despite that, it was also yet another game that didn't really meet the sales expectations that was set out for it. So yes, in 2025, we're going to see a significant drop-off in releases from Square Enix, but it isn't anything to panic about. In fact, we'll probably look back and see this as a sort of turning point. At the end of the day, would you rather get 10 games of varying quality, or would you rather have 3 or 4 games of extraordinarily high quality? Personally speaking, I'm going to pick the latter. I will say though, I believe that Square Enix's 2025 lineup is not going to be as dry as many people might think right now. I do suspect there is probably at least something in the pipeline that is going to be coming this year. Whether it's big or small, who can say for sure? For full disclosure, that is mostly vibes-based, though it's worth noting that many studios do announce games that are coming the same year, which is to say that I'm sure they do have at least 1 or 2 games coming, which brings us to the elephant in the room: Final Fantasy IX Remake and Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered. These titles are practically, though unofficially, confirmed to be in development. It does make sense for at least one of these titles to be slated for 2025, and of course, Final Fantasy IX Remake would be a big enough game to fill out this year, and if that's the only major game coming this year, I think that most people would be more than happy to see it. If I had to place a bet on what's coming for 2025, that to me seems like the most likely thing. But all of this is just speculation, and I want to hear yours in the comments below. Be sure to check out Instant Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next video.